All right, gang, final editorial for Thursday. This is the last story of the day. And then tomorrow, start again. I still have a list of stories to give to you, a list of editorials to give. So I'm going to be busy for the next few days. This one, we're going to go up to Seattle. And the Seattle Police Department, a lot of the officers up there have issues, and they're pointing fingers. And we're going to find out right now where they're pointing the fingers at up there in Seattle. Thank you to KomoNews.com for this story. Many officers who have left the Seattle Police Department blamed political leaders inside City Hall for their decision to leave employment with the city. Several exit interviews obtained by Komo News had a common theme, blaming Mayor Jenny Durkan and the Seattle City Council members. In one exit interview, an officer wrote, in part, "The City Council has made it apparent that maintaining an adequate staffing to keep the city or the officers that work there is not a priority for them." But council members dismissed that claim. Councilwoman Teresa Mosqueda said this is not a unique situation that Seattle is experiencing. She and other city council members on Tuesday did not directly address the exit interviews while discussing the city's budget plan for the next year, which could include a reduction of the police budget. Councilmember Tammy Morales said, quote, "If we want to decrease police violence, which is what all these protests have been about, we need to reduce contacts with the police." But some of the officers in the exit interviews say issues with the Seattle Police Department are more because of politics than because of anything the officers are doing. One officer said in an exit interview, "City Council has made it very clear they do not want a police department and would rather defund Seattle Police Department. Morale is very low due to the climate and the stance of political leaders." Councilwoman Morales said, "I'm not inclined to prioritize maintaining staffing levels that seem like arbitrary metrics." Councilwoman Kshama Sawant said cutting the police budget by 50% is the only way many on the council will keep their word to the protesters who've wanted a defunded department. Sawant said, quote, "Reducing the funding and therefore the size of the police department would mean that the police would not have the resources to continue to overstaff and abuse Black Lives Matter protests." Council members did not immediately return calls seeking comment about the police exit interviews. So it appears the police officers that are leaving and exiting are pointing fingers at City Hall and the City Council and saying they don't care about us. It's politics is the reason we're leaving. And some of the council members, as you've seen, want to reduce and defund the police, saying that we need less police encounters with the public, and that will give the police officers less chance to, what was it they said, abuse Black Lives Matter protests. Now, when they say overstaff, I wonder if that's what they mean, that, you know how sometimes they have a traffic stop and 6 cops show up, and then all of a sudden you have a fight and the guy gets drug out of the car and the guy gets thrown on the ground. And I think that's what they're talking about, is that if you have a smaller police force, you have less cops who could show up to a call or a traffic stop, and therefore there are less negative interactions. But I want to know what you guys think, especially those of you up in Seattle and all of the surrounding towns there. What do you think about defunding and reducing the Seattle Police Department, reducing their size and making it easier for them to interact with the public and not abuse people as they would be overstaffed? I don't know. It's so confusing. But again, a lot of the officers, as you've seen, are not pointing fingers at the public. They're not pointing fingers at the protesters. They're pointing fingers at the politicians within the city and the city council. That's interesting. Are they playing a blame game? Are they saying, well, that's why we're leaving, because of them? Is it a blame game? Is it a finger pointing? Are there underlying issues? Is it because officers are tired of the complaints from people? Do they feel like their hands are tied by the politicians and they can't do anything because, well, if we do anything, we're going to get accused and we're going to get blamed, and then the politicians are going to listen to the protesters and not listen to the police? And it sounds like maybe they are listening to the protesters, especially muffler. Especially Councilperson Sawant, who said, hey, we don't want them to have the resources to continue to overstaff and abuse Black Lives Matter protesters. Huh? What do all of you Blue Line people think? Let me know. The comment section below. Community Leo Watch, watching Leos. That's law enforcement officers and Seattle council persons from coast to coast.